was Morton Downey Jr. His time on TV was brief, but it was provocative and explosive.
America, socialism is coming, and it's time to wake up.
As you're going to find out in the weeks, months, and years ahead, certain things really burn my bum.
Morton Downey Jr. wasn't just a TV host. He was a cultural arsonist. For 2 years, he set television on fire with rage, smoke, and violence. But the blue-collar hero shouting at the camera was a myth. The real man was a desperate prince, terrified of his own irrelevance. That terror drove him to stage a hate crime against himself, a pathetic lie that didn't just end his career, it erased him. Why did he choose self-destruction? The answer isn't in the bathroom where he faked the attack. It lies in the shadow of a famous father and the monster Morton created to escape him, a monster that eventually ate him alive. The ghost of the father. Long before the Mort chants, there was another, far more famous Morton Downey Sr. He wasn't a brawler, he was America's greatest Irish tenor. He was a wholesome, beloved superstar of the 1930s and 40s. A friend to presidents, a golf buddy of Bing Crosby. He was, for all intents and purposes, American royalty. Senior was a phenomenon. His radio show was a national staple. He was a wealthy, universally adored entertainer who embodied class and decency. He lived in a 20-room mansion, and his social circle wasn't just other singers, it was the Kennedys. And his son, Sean Morton Downey Jr., was born a prince. He didn't grow up in a tough blue-collar neighborhood. He grew up next to the Kennedy compound. His mother was a Hollywood actress. His godfather was Joseph P. Kennedy, the patriarch of the Kennedy clan. He was playmates with Ted Kennedy. This was the hidden crisis that would define his entire life. His privilege wasn't a gift, it was a prison. He was living in a shadow so vast, it blotted out the sun. He was Morton Downey Jr., a footnote to a legend. His entire life became a desperate, failed attempt to get out of that shadow. He tried to be his father. He became a singer in the 1950s. He recorded a few albums. They were commercial disasters. He had a decent voice, but he wasn't his dad. He was an echo, an imitation. He tried to be a politician, leaning heavily on his Kennedy connections. He ran for president in 1980 as a fringe Democratic candidate. It wasn't a real campaign, it was a desperate stunt. A press conference so absurd he failed to get on a single ballot. He failed. He tried to be a serious radio host. This became his long, agonizing middle act. He bounced from city to city, station to station, leaving a trail of scorched earth. He was too abrasive, too weird, too desperate. He was fired from a station in Atlanta. He was fired from a station in Orlando. His most infamous failure came in Cleveland. He was fired for making a crude, offensive joke about a lesbian on a bicycle who worked at the station. When the station manager confronted him, Mort, in a fit of rage, allegedly tried to strangle him. By the mid-1980s, Morton Downey Jr. was in his 50s. He was a nobody, a failed singer, a failed politician, a washed-up, serially fired radio host. He was, in his own words, a total, complete, and utter failure. This was the psychological root of the monster. He was a man consumed by a father-son, jealousy so profound it had hollowed him out. He was desperate, he was angry, and he had nothing left to lose. And that's when he discovered the secret, the ticking time bomb that would launch his career and seal his doom. He was hosting a tiny last-chance radio show in Sacramento. He was bitter, he was broke. One night, a caller, a local politician, disagreed with him. Morton snapped. He didn't just argue, he attacked, he screamed. He called the man a slime bucket and a fraud. He cut him off. He hung up on him. And then, the station's phone lines exploded. The listeners didn't just like it, they loved it. In that moment, Morton Downey Jr. had his revelation. They didn't want Morton Downey Jr., the charming son of a tenor. They didn't want a serious host. They wanted a monster, and a monster is exactly what he would give them. The birth of the monster. The Morton Downey Jr. character was born. He wasn't Sean, the privileged prince from the mansion. He was Mort, the tough-talking, chain-smoking man of the people from the streets. It was all an act. The son of a millionaire was cosplaying as a blue-collar hero. He got a local TV show in Secaucus, New Jersey, and in 1987, it went national. The Morton Downey Jr. show was not a program. It was an explosion. From the very first second, it was clear that every rule of television had just been chainsawed. The set was a Roman Colosseum of chaos. Producers reportedly kept the studio temperature uncomfortably hot to keep the audience sweating and agitated. It wasn't just a talk show. It was a psychological experiment in manufactured rage. He called his podium the loudmouth. He called his audience the mob. They weren't just spectators, they were participants. They were a sea of screaming working-class faces, whipped into a frenzy. He would stalk the stage, a cigarette dangling from his lips, a long, coiled microphone cord in his hand like a whip. He wasn't a host. He was a cult leader. His audience, the Mort's mob, wore Mort t-shirts. They chanted his name, and they sat in a U-shaped arena he called the pit, ready to attack, and Mort fed them red meat. His guests were not people. They were targets, feminists, gay rights activists, civil rights leaders, anyone who didn't fit his narrow, traditional worldview. He didn't just debate Al Sharpton. He got in his face, poking his finger in his chest, screaming, "You're a con man, you're a fraud," until a near riot broke out. He didn't interview the lawyer for Tawana Brawley. He called him a scumbag and a liar until the man lunged at him on live television, forcing security to pile on. He intentionally created violence. In one infamous St. Patrick's Day episode, he brought on Irish-American activists, then brought out a gay Irish-American group, and just lit the fuse. A brawl erupted on set. Guests were punched, chairs were thrown, noses were broken. It was the definition of car crash television. Millions of viewers tuned in every night, not because they agreed with him, but because they were waiting to see if tonight was the night the bomb finally went off. And at the center of it all was Mort, puffing, posturing, and pontificating. The show was a cultural phenomenon. It was the most vile, grotesque, and successful show in television history. It beat Oprah. It beat Donahue. Morton Downey Jr. was, for one brief, white-hot moment, the biggest star in the world. He had done it. He was 56 years old, and he was finally more famous than his father. He had killed the ghost. But this is the hidden crisis. He was trapped. He wasn't a person anymore. He was a persona. And the persona was a drug. The nightly roar of the mob was his validation. The show was a vortex. The ratings were a beast that had to be fed every single night. He had to be louder. He had to be crazier. He had to top the near riot from the night before. The pressure was immense. And then, the backlash began. Not from critics, but from advertisers. Major companies like Procter & Gamble and General Mills started pulling their ads. They wanted nothing to do with this toxic freak show. The monster was becoming financially poisonous. And worse, the ratings started to slip. The monster was getting stale. The shock value was fading. The freak show was becoming predictable. His audience was getting bored. Morton Downey Jr., the character, was dying. And Morton Downey Jr., the man, was terrified. He was terrified of becoming a nobody again. He was terrified of the ghost of his father returning. He was a cornered animal. He was desperate. He needed a story. He didn't just need to host the news. He needed to be the news. And in April 1989, in an airport bathroom in San Francisco, he decided to write his own script, The Lie That Killed the King. This was the apex of his desperation. He was in San Francisco for a show. His ratings were down. His monster persona was fading. He needed something massive. He needed to be a hero. He needed to be a victim. On April 24th, 1989, he called the police from a men's room at the airport. He was frantic. He told them he had been attacked. The story was horrifying. He said he was accosted by two neo-Nazi skinheads. He claimed they recognized him, called him a traitor, and jumped him. He said they beat him, kicked him, and tried to shave his head with clippers. And then, the final, devastating detail. He claimed they used a black magic marker to draw a swastika on his face. The media exploded. It was the biggest story in the country. Mort attacked by Nazis. He held a press conference from his hotel, wearing a robe, looking shaken but defiant. He was on every news channel. He was puffed up, righteous, and outraged. He was a victim. He was a hero who was attacked for his beliefs. The monster was back on the front page. He had won. But this is the ticking time bomb of the lie. The story was too perfect. The details were too weird. The police were suspicious from minute one. First, there were no other witnesses in one of the busiest airports in the world. Then, there was the swastika. A detective pointed out it was drawn backwards. It was the kind of backwards you get when you draw something on your own face while looking in a mirror. Morton panicked. He went on TV and claimed the skinhead was so dumb, he didn't even know to draw his own symbol. But the lie was unraveling. The police, now furious at this media circus, investigated. They found the electric clippers he claimed the skinheads used. They were found in Morton's own checked luggage. They found the cut hair in the bathroom. It was his hair, cut with his clippers. The bombshell reveal, it was all a hoax, a pathetic, desperate, and amateur publicity stunt. The fallout was instant and total. He wasn't just a liar, he was a joke. The toughest man on television was a fraud who beat himself up in a bathroom and drew on his own face with a marker. The mockery was brutal. Saturday Night Live aired a famous sketch where Tom Hanks played Mort, attacking himself in a bathroom. David Letterman and Johnny Carson feasted on him for weeks. He became the national punchline. But the real betrayal was felt by his blue-collar audience, the Mort's mob. He wasn't their leader. He was a rich, privileged kid from a mansion who was laughing at them. He had exposed them as fools for believing in him. His career didn't just end. It evaporated. His show was canceled within months. His fame vanished. He was toxic, radioactive. The monster was dead. And the man who created him was buried alive. The man behind the smoke. So, how should we remember the king of trash TV? The fallout from his lie was total. He was erased. He spent the last decade of his life as a national punchline. He was broke and disgraced. He tried comebacks, a rap album, a failed website. He even hosted a low-budget alien autopsy special. He was a ghost haunting the graveyard of his own fame. But this is the final, devastating irony of his story. The one part of his persona that was real, the chain smoking, the addiction he turned into a prop, it came for him. In 1996, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. The king of smoke was drowning from the inside. But this is the final, shocking pivot of his life. The monster died, and for the first time, Morton Downey Jr., the man, emerged. He had a lung removed, and he spent the last years of his life as a passionate anti-smoking advocate. The loudest man in America was now speaking in a whisper. He flew across the country, begging teenagers not to make his mistake. It was the only honest performance of his life. He died in 2001, broke, disgraced, and alone. Morton Downey Jr. spent his entire life running from his father's ghost, only to become a ghost himself. He built an empire on a lie, his persona, and destroyed it with a lie, the attack. His story is the ultimate cautionary tale, a story of a man so desperate to be seen, so terrified of being a nobody, that he burned down his own world just to feel warm for a minute. But what do you think? Was Morton Downey Jr. a pioneer who changed TV forever? Or was he a tragic fraud, destroyed by his own desperation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We have a new video, just like this one, coming next week. If you love digging deeper than the headlines, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss another video. If you loved this story, we've got more celebrity deep dives queued up for you. And here's a bonus tip. If there's anything you're curious about, drop it in the comments. We'll pick it up, dig into the story, and turn it into a full video just for you. Thanks for watching.